So if you can keep the balls low, you're going to give your opponents shots like that instead of like this. If you ever struggle with people banging the ball at you, if you ever struggle with people smashing the ball at you, then this is going to be the video for you. Hey everyone, it's Pickleball with Tyler with Universal Rackets, and in this video we are going to be doing a full masterclass on how to keep your ball low and at your opponent's feet. If you watch this whole video, we are going to learn tips and tricks on how to keep the ball low. In order to win in pickleball, you have to force your opponents to hit the ball up instead of hitting the ball down. If you can keep the ball low at your opponent's feet, if you hit me a ball here, the only thing I can do is either A, be neutral, B, defensive and pop the ball up and give you an opportunity. If you keep the ball up here and you hit me a ball here, all I can do is hit down and be offensive. So make sure you buckle your seatbelts and stay tuned, because this is going to be an amazing video. Let's go. Now we are going to start at the kitchen and then we're going to work our way back into the drives, into the serves, into the drops. But now up at the kitchen, the first thing that you have to do to keep the ball low is understand this one concept, and that is less is more. When you're up at the kitchen, there's very little distance. If your opponent's up at the kitchen and you're up at the kitchen, you have to keep the ball low. And the reason why players end up popping the ball up at a beginner, intermediate, club level, number one, is because they do too much. If you take a big swing, there's more room for error, and there's a higher chance that you are going to pop the ball up. So the first thing that I want you to do to keep the ball low up at the kitchen is to limit your swing. Now, a little bit goes a long way. So if you're taking this big of a dink, I want you to shorten it a tiny bit. If you're taking this big of a swing for your dink, I want you to make it even shorter. A great drill to do, or you can even self-feed the ball to you, all you're going to do is try to hit the ball over and minimize your paddle swing. If you can have your paddle go from here to here, rather than take a giant swing, the ball's going to stay lower. It's going to cover less distance. Now, the next thing that you can think of, and different tips work for different people and not one size fits all, is when you're dinking, you want to think of a push. You don't want to think of a hit. A lot of players, where they go wrong is when they're up at the kitchen, they hit the ball. When you hit the ball, you pop it up. If you can think that you push the ball rather than hit it forward, that's going to help keep the ball low. The next thing that you can do to ensure that every single one of your shots up at the kitchen are going to be low is you can get into your legs. Too many players, they're standing straight up, and if they go down, they bend at their waist and they don't get into their legs. I want you to understand this. If I bend at my waist and I'm hitting a low ball, look, when I swing, what's going to happen? I'm going to swing and hit the ball up. When I bend at my waist, I go down and I end up hitting the ball up to my opponent. If I drop down and get into my legs, now when I swing, instead of going upward, I'm going to be going more forward. And if you can think that you're dropping your center of gravity, getting into your legs and hitting forward rather than upward, that's going to, again, keep the ball at a lower height and make your shots less attackable. So when you hit, if you're 6 feet tall, I want you to be 5 feet tall. If you're 5 feet tall, I want you to be 4 feet tall, okay? So you're going to drop down, drop your center of gravity, pretend that there's a ceiling above your head, and you're going to stay down and hit forward. Again, that's the ball that I want to do. I don't want to go like that. I don't want to bend down at my waist. I want to drop my center of gravity and push the ball forward. The next thing that you can do is, if you are a visual learner, I want you to pretend that there is a line above the net about a paddle height high above the net. There's a line this high above the net. Anytime that you're dinking or you want to make your shots unattackable while you're up at the kitchen, you want to aim in between this space. If you aim anywhere higher, it's going to sit up and your opponent's going to be able to come down on the ball. So you want to go kind of low over the net. You want to make sure that you're always, again, going here. You're not going higher up here. So again, if you're a visual learner, pretend that there's a line about a paddle height high across the net and keep that ball low. Remember, in pickleball, to gain control, you have to give up control. The more you let the paddle work for you and the less you work for the paddle, the better it's going to be. You need to hold the paddle loose. You need to think of your paddle as a paintbrush, as an art. You don't want to think of it as a big, giant, tight swing. You need to think that you're absorbing the pace of the ball when you hit. If you're holding the paddle tight and the ball hits, it's going to deflect back and it's going to pop the ball up. However, if I'm holding the paddle loose and I'm absorbing the shot, it's going to make it go a less distance. So I want you to think that you're holding the paddle loose and you are absorbing the pace. A great drill to do, and I kid you not, this is the best drill to teach you feel, is literally throw the ball up and just work on catching and controlling the ball. That's going to help you establish that feel that you're looking for. If you're holding it tight and you're not absorbing the pace, watch what's going to happen. The ball is just going to bounce right off. However, if you really carry and absorb the pace of the ball, look what's going to happen. You're going to have your dinks get lower and more at your opponent's feet, and again, you're going to pop the ball up less. The next thing that you can do is play with spin. If you're getting more advanced, instead of just going forward, you're going to play with spin and you're going to try to use topspin. If you can use topspin on your shots, it's going to also help keep the ball down. Now, when I'm up the kitchen, I want to hit dinks or keep the ball at my opponent's feet while they're up at the kitchen. What we're going to do is we're going to think about holding our paddle loose and going low to high. Again, I'm putting my paddle down and then I'm coming up the top of the ball. Again, I'm here, I'm putting my paddle down, coming up on top of the ball. By going low to high, that's going to keep the ball low as well. The next thing that you can do to keep the ball low is you can think that you're hitting from your arm and your shoulder rather than with your wrist. Too many players, what they're doing is that they're flipping burgers at Five Guys. They're going like this, and when I go like this with my wrist, the ball goes up in there. I want to use my arm and shoulder, and I want to go forward. Again, remember, push forward, don't swing up. Now, that was when I'm up at the kitchen and my opponent's up at the kitchen. Now, if my opponents are further back in the transition, how do I hit at my opponent's feet? I swing down and I aim towards their feet. A great thing to do is if your opponent's ever hitting a third drop or they're staying back to the baseline, give yourself some targets out here and just work on drilling to those targets. When I'm hitting again, I'm not trying to go too long. A lot of players, where they go wrong is when they're up at the kitchen and their opponents are taking a third or they're staying back. They end up going too long because they try to perfect along the baseline. Notice when I'm hitting these balls, and notice where the targets are, they're not straight out all the way to the baseline. They're a little bit inside the baseline. By having the targets inside the baseline, now it gives me a lot of margin for error, and now I can go towards my opponent's feet. Again, when I have a ball and my opponents are back, I'm not aiming back to the baseline. I could miss it, the ball is going to be out, they're going to win the point. I'm going to aim at those targets every single time, and that's going to, again, keep the ball low at my opponent's feet, and also it's going to give me a lot of margin for error. Now we are going to take it back to the baseline and we're going to go over how to keep the ball low when I'm hitting all of my shots. Now the first thing that I can do to really keep the ball low when I'm hitting a drive or a drop is I can play with topspin. If you can play with topspin, it's going to keep the ball low and it's going to go at your opponent's feet. Too many players, where they go wrong is that they hit too flat and they hit forward. If you hit flat, the spin isn't going to come into play and the ball's not going to dip down. It's going to stay above the net, and again, your opponent's going to be able to have an offensive shot. So what you need to do is you need to add topspin onto your shots. Notice if I add topspin onto my shots and the ball doesn't go into the net like that, if I can add topspin on my shots, I'm going to be able to keep that ball more low. If it's either A, my opponents are back at the baseline, or B, my opponents are up at the kitchen. So step number one is hit topspin. Now, when you hit topspin or you play with spin, the slower the ball is going to go, the more gravity is going to come into play, and the ball is going to stay low at your opponent's feet. The secret is, if you want to hit an effective shot, you have to understand that playing with 60% power and 95% consistency is way more effective than playing at 100% power and having 50% consistency. And what I mean by that is I'm not telling you to abnormally slow your shots down, but you don't want to hit super hard. It's going to break down and it's going to go long. If I can hit 60% power and play with spin, that's going to allow the ball to dip into the court and stay low. So again, make sure you're playing with spin, and also you're playing with a lower percentage of power than you typically do. If you can do that, you're going to keep the ball low at your opponent's feet. When I'm hitting a drop, I'm not hitting a drop at 100 miles per hour. I'm going and I'm lifting the ball. Do you see how, look how slow I'm hitting those shots. I'm not trying to drill the ball. I have to understand that, again, if I lower the pace, I'm going to lower my ball. Now, here's the big thing. A lot of players, what they're going to do is they're going to take that piece of advice that I just given them, and what are they going to do? They're going to slow down their swing. And that's kind of the opposite. And this is one big, one big light bulb moment that players have to understand, is that if they want to keep the ball low and they want to be effective, they still have to accelerate and commit with their paddle speed. A lot of players, where they go wrong is they can't keep the ball low at their opponents because maybe they're slowing their shots down, they're afraid to hit it, they don't want to miss, and they end up slowing their paddle down. If you're slowing your paddle down, your paddle's not going to be able to do the work to get that spin to keep the ball low. Slowing down your shot does not mean slowing down your swing. Slowing down your shot means that instead of getting a ton of the ball, you're getting less of the ball. You're getting, instead of going through the ball, you're brushing up the back of the ball. So instead of going through, again, I'm hitting a 100% pace when I'm getting all of the ball. If I want to get less of the ball, all I'm going to do is still swing, but look, I'm coming up the back of the ball. So you need to think again, you're coming up the back of the ball. You're not swinging forward and through every single one of your shots. So again, get less of the ball by brushing the back of it, not by slowing down your speed, and committing with your paddle speed, accelerating. And that's the next thing, accelerate throughout your shots. If you want to be able to keep the balls low, you need to accelerate. Notice my swing never slows down. I'm going to end up popping the ball up and getting the ball high in my opponent's wheelhouse if I slow down my speed. So commit. When you swing for your forehand, backhand drive, or topspin drop, when you swing, you want to be here. You want to be able to hear the whoosh against your paddle. You want to be able to hear the wind going, can you guys hear it? Against your paddle. You don't want to not hear that, because that means that you're not swinging fast enough. You need to be loose. You need to make sure you get down into your legs. You need to make sure that you commit to your shot. And for your drops, if you're hitting a normal drop, you need to make sure that you absorb your shot. Again, when you're hitting a drop, and we're going to get into that, we are going to be loose and really do less work with our paddle. We're not going to take a giant swing. The dink and the drop are kind of the same thing. You need to think that you're pushing the ball, you're not hitting the ball. And too many players end up popping the ball up for their drops because they end up hitting the ball and not pushing the ball forward. So when I'm here, again, I'm not taking a big giant swing and hitting. I'm putting my paddle out, minimizing it, and pushing it forward. If you want to keep your drops low and you're not hitting a topspin drop, you need to keep your paddle out in front, and you need to minimize your paddle swing. You have to understand that less is more. So if you can do this on every single one of your pickleball shots, when you're dinking, you're getting low, you're pushing forward, you're staying under your ceiling. When you're hitting your drives or your drops, topspin drops, you're committing, you're accelerating, you're getting less of the ball, you're slowing your shot down, but by not swinging hard enough, you're accelerating, but you're getting less of the ball. You're keeping your body down, you're going forward rather than up. You're going to keep balls lower at your opponent's feet. They're going to be forced to hit up. They're going to give you offensive opportunities, and you are going to be able to win more points. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to share this with all of your pickleball group. Have a good one, happy heading, and I cannot wait to see you guys next time on court.